Proficiency-based learning is part of Act 77, and proficiency-based learning really describes the system in which we are identifying our curriculum standards with our students. And so within proficiency-based learning, there's a few key components. It's really a mastery system. And so we're really helping our students move towards mastery. Sometimes we hear other states talk about competency-based learning, which is very similar to proficiency-based learning in that we have these clear learning targets and we're being explicit with students about the learning expectations, and we're scaffolding our learning opportunities to help them achieve mastery. Another key component of this proficiency-based learning system is allowing voice and choice. And so really creating these opportunities for students so that they can personalize their learning. We're differentiating some of the practice opportunities that we're giving to kids. And one of the cornerstones of proficiency-based learning is that it really is not dependent on seat time. So we think about the factory model of schooling. So you're in 6th grade, you learn this, you're in 7th grade, you have to learn these pieces, and within a mastery system, we're really looking at, once a student is proficient in a skill, moving them forward. So it's not so much determined by necessarily the calendar, the pace is really determined by the student.
So if there are students at different levels, does this mean that the teacher is going to have to be teaching different things to all the students?
Yeah, so part of what's so nice about proficiency-based learning is that we have these clear learning targets, and because they are task neutral, meaning students can be displaying them in different ways, it allows the teacher to differentiate and personalize. So different students could be working on different things within one classroom. So when we think about a student who maybe has already mastered a topic, the teacher then can identify a new learning target and collaborate with that student to work towards their next goal.
So how does proficiency-based learning support the PLP?
So when we think about the PLP, we're really thinking about that student goal setting, we're thinking about the transferable skills, and we're really thinking about that student voice and choice. And so when we think about proficiency-based learning in the PLP, part of proficiency-based learning is helping students and as teachers really keeping that evidence of learning. So how are we identifying how a student is progressing through these learning progressions to achieve mastery? And so the PLP is a really wonderful place where students can identify and self-select those pieces of evidence that show that they've mastered the concepts and skills that have been directed by the teacher. The other thing that's really nice is that there's this infusion of transferable skills, and we're really intentional about using the transferable skills throughout our curriculum. And so on the PLP, students also can be working on, in the classroom, in their proficiency-based learning curriculum, they can be working on their transferable skill goals, they can be identifying their growth. And so the PLP is really, in my mind, this hub where students are able to select different pieces of evidence and also reflect on where they are in the process of learning and on achieving their goals.
So how does proficiency-based learning increase a student's engagement and motivation in the classroom?
So one of the shifts with proficiency-based learning is this idea of having multiple opportunities to reach a goal. And so the other thing that I think is really important about personalized learning that we think about sometimes is you can't hit a target that you can't see. And so when we ask students to personalize, or if we say, we're trying to partner with them on something and they don't know what the goal is, they don't know where we're going. That's one of the key questions that students should be able to answer. Where are we going and where am I in relation to that goal? In proficiency-based learning, we're really clear from the start what the goal of the learning is. And so it really allows for the student to work with the teacher, advocate for themselves. It also allows the teacher to really create opportunities that allow students to select how they want to perform something or go deeper within a content area. And it really does create for more deep learning opportunities. And so students are really asked to pick interest areas and go deep on them in different inquiries and pieces like that. And so it really increases the opportunities for the student voice and choice, which we know increases engagement and motivation, tapping into that emotional side of learning. So within proficiency-based learning and the use of the transferable skills, we really look for students to self-identify the transferable skills that they want to work on. It's so important when we're talking about the transferable skills. Sometimes they're called academic dispositions. Some schools it talks about scholarly habits, but they are the disposition of the learner. And so when we think about those pieces, it's so important that the student has a voice in identifying their own goals in the transferable skills, because they're the ones that really own, if we're talking about being self-directed, the student has the ownership of their direction. And so we really need to create spaces where students can identify their own goals within the transferable skills, and then be mindful as we're in our classrooms to be asking them to reflect on these skills and dispositions, these transferable skills throughout the process of learning. And so that's another way that student voice and choice and personalization is infused in a proficiency-based learning system. So when we talk about having clear expectations with students and those clear targets, and we're thinking about teaching with proficiencies, the way that we do that is through the establishment of rubrics and learning scales. The rubrics and learning scales really map for a student the progression, and we really talk about the build of cognitive complexity for how they reach that learning target. And so it's through this rubric, sometimes there are 4 levels, sometimes there are 5 levels, but it really identifies and breaks down for the student what it looks like at each of the different levels. And this learning scale or rubric is really a living part of your classroom. So you're constantly going back to it. You're constantly having students select the evidence that they'd use to be able to monitor where they are in relation to that learning goal. And it really does help to answer those 3 questions. Where are we going? What is the goal? Where am I currently? So where am I in relation to that goal? And then how do I close that gap? And so by keeping this transparency with students, it really opens it up to allowing for that voice and choice that we know just really meets the needs of young adolescents.